So, the problem with conspiracy theories is it's hard to know which ones are true and which ones aren't.
Well, the basic fundamental fact is we know that this was from a lab in China.
Yeah.
It was not from a wet market,
Yeah.
which is what the original story was. I remember quite distinctly at the time seeing news items. I mean, I don't have a television license now, thank goodness. But I remember seeing images in Italy of trucks driving through the streets, ominously carrying bodies out. And that was deliberately designed to scare the bejesus out of everybody. And throughout that time, the government and its actors, should we use that term, deliberately wished to make the British public scared, because that's what governments do. Governments have a reason to exist, and one of them is to keep you distracted. So that could be IRA terrorism, it could be Muslim terrorism, it could be a pandemic. Whatever it is, if you think of every year and every decade that we've had, there will always be something that the government panders to in order to scare the British people into complicity. And that was just one of them. That was a great one, because what it allowed the government to do at the time, a conservative government, was to print money. And the moment you print money, I'm not an economist, Ken, I have no qualifications in economics, but I know that if you print money, inflation follows. It's not rocket science. And so I think the government has now gone to the point whereby it has almost told many of the big institutions, what you can do to recover the money you lost during the pandemic is to screw the British public with huge hikes in prices. So the supermarkets have hiked their prices. They go up literally while you're watching. I'll give you an example in insurance companies. My car, during the pandemic, must have done about 10 miles. It sat on the drive. I still paid for the insurance. I still paid for the car tax, and it sat going nowhere. So those insurance companies didn't receive many claims in those couple of years. So their profits were huge. And then when we came out of the pandemic, they were allowed to put their prices up. So you think to yourself, who's being screwed here? And it's the British public as usual. And so I think we talk about conspiracies. They're only conspiracies because we want to close down the discussion.
Well, I mean, I remember going during the election. I went up to a meeting up at Sefton, and this woman got up and said, "I want to talk about chemtrails, geoengineering and so on." And immediately she was shut down. Nobody was prepared to even allow her to speak about it. Now, I know that a lot of the people are supporters, and I'm not sure about chemtrails either, because I look at the sky and it doesn't look like the same sky that I looked at 20 years ago. But I haven't had time to investigate it enough to be sure, and I'm not sure even if you did investigate it enough whether you could ever be really sure about what's going on. But it's as I say, I'm just concerned that there's a slight disconnect between the top leadership and the issues that people have on the ground.
I can only speak from my own perspective. My worry when we got 5 MPs, obviously after the initial, wow, isn't that fantastic, is that once those 5 MPs get sucked into the Westminster bubble, it's very difficult because they are effectively 5 against 645. And that's a hard one. No matter how good those 5 MPs are, to be sucked into, that world. I mean, I spent all my working life pretty much in London. I know what it's like. The mentality in London is not remotely the same as it is outside London. And I did worry that would happen. Do I think that's happened? No, I don't. But as time goes on, we need to guard against that as a party. We are a disruptor party. And what we can't be seen as establishment, because the moment we're seen as part of the establishment, people will say, well, where do I put my vote now? We now have the ability, and a great ability, that we're the only opposition to the establishment. The only opposition to the establishment. And we can't afford a misstep.
I agree.
And I think we've had a misstep. We had that wonderful thing where Kemi basically gave us loads of, she must have had too much sherry, I think, that day when she wrote that tweet. But she gave us loads and loads of new members, and Nigel played on it, and God bless him, that's what he does. So we were riding high then, and now suddenly we've gone down a peg, and that's a self-inflicted wound. You can only have so many self-inflicted wounds before people start to go, maybe Elon was right. Now, I don't think Elon is right, but the fact is, you've got to be very careful.
You have to look at Nigel Farage's record and say that his political judgment is generally impeccable.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, you have to put your colours on one particular mast. And as long as Nigel wants to be leader of the party, I think he will be. And I trust his instinct, and I trust him as a person to do the right thing. As I say, I just have concerns that he sometimes lacks the confidence to perhaps take on some of these things that I've been talking about in terms of the COVID skepticism. He should perhaps take it on, and it would make my life a lot easier when I'm speaking to people on the ground to say, but really, he's on board with that.
In his defence, you can't fight all the battles at the same time, because what happens then is you just become seen as, oh God, it's going on again. So he does pick his battles, and I accept that. But I do think what we could do as a party is Nigel could pick that subject. Rupert Lowe, who I'm very impressed with,
he's been very good.
I have to say,
very good.
That's an exceptional individual. He could pick another subject. Richard Tice could pick another. And I think that would have more resonance rather than just expecting Nigel to take the lead on everything.
Yeah, I agree.
Because then you become just a whinger in the eyes of the press. And so Nigel is an absolute star when it comes to precise, like the banking scandal is a perfect example. But I do think sometimes he takes on too much. And that's our fault as well, Ken, because we expect him to take the lead on things. But I'm perfectly happy to go to a lecture and listen to Rupert Lowe talk about farming, because that man is exceptional. He really is exceptional.
He's come through very well.